Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. I hope everyone is shaving a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The early December sun glowed softly over Los Angeles, painting the Forrester estate in a golden warmth that felt almost deceptive considering the storm of emotions already brewing inside the mansion. Because Christmas at the Forrester home was supposed to be a time of unity, forgiveness, and sparkle. But this year, the halls were filled with whispers and uneasy glances as word spread. Thomas Forrester was coming home after months of complete silence. No texts, no calls, no appearances, nothing. But a sudden message 2 days before Christmas Eve that shook the family. "I'm coming home and I'm not coming alone." Those words alone were enough to ignite 1,000 speculations between Ridge, Brooke, Steffi, Hope, Eric, Zen, everyone. Because Thomas didn't just vanish months ago. He left LA with a bruised heart, a shattered reputation, and no real closure, disappearing somewhere in Europe after saying he needed time, space, and distance from everything that kept dragging him into shadows he couldn't escape. But no one expected him to turn like this. No one expected him to go back into their lives. With an entire new family by his side, the mansion was glowing with Christmas decor, but the tension was unmistakable. Rich paced in the living room wearing the same expression he had the night Thomas ran off, worried, protective, bracing for the worst. Brooke sipped her tea while pretending she wasn't nervous. Though her fingers shook slightly, Steffi tried to keep a calm face, but even she wasn't prepared for whatever surprise Thomas was bringing. And Hope. Hope couldn't even sit still, standing behind the sofa with her arms crossed, her eyes flickering with fear and curiosity because her history with Thomas was layered with guilt, confusion, and emotions she wished she could bury. But this wasn't about her, or so she tried to tell herself. This was about Thomas bringing people into their lives that none of them had ever met, which raised one question across the room. What kind of family did he suddenly have? "Maybe it's not as dramatic as everyone thinks," Brooke tried saying, even though she didn't believe her own words. "Maybe he just made some friends abroad." "Friends don't usually get introduced as a family," Logan, Ridge muttered, running his hands through his hair. "He said, we know what he said," Steffi snapped softly, trying to mask her anxiety. "The point is he's coming home. That matters." Hope looked down, her voice timid. Do you think it's a woman? Maybe someone he met while traveling?" Eric finally spoke, sitting near the fireplace. "If he found someone who makes him stable, who brings out the good in him, that should be something we support, not fear," Brooke sighed. "Eric, you didn't see his message. It sounded intense." And before any of them could continue theorizing, a text buzzed on IDG's phone. He glanced at it and froze. Everyone turned toward the large front doors as the living room fell into a complete hush. Not even the Christmas music playing softly in the background seemed to dare continue. Steffi stepped forward first, Hope behind her, then Ridge and Brooke, and at last Eric slowly rising. They waited in a line, holding their breaths. The front doors opened, and Thomas stepped inside. But it was who stepped beside him that truly shook the room. Thomas looked completely transformed. He had grown a beard, a little thicker around the jaw, giving him a more mature, grounded look. His hair was longer, brushed back, and his wardrobe was different, darker, European-style layers that suited him in a way that said he had grown, healed, changed. But the biggest shock was the emotion in his eyes. He wasn't angry. He wasn't daunted. He wasn't manic or broken or uncertain. He looked at peace as Thuft finally found somewhere to breathe. Behind him stepped a woman, a stunning woman in her late 20s with warm brown skin, long dark curly hair, and a calmness in her eyes that made the room instantly soften. She held the hand of a little girl, maybe 3 or 4 years old, with Thomas's blue eyes and the woman's curly hair. Rich felt his chest tighten. Steffi's breath caught. Hope Shand flew to her mouth. Brooke's eyes widened. Thomas cleared his throat and spoke with a quiet confidence none of them had ever heard before. "Everyone, this is Arya," he said, motioning to the woman. "And this is my daughter," gasps echoed. "My daughter," Thomas repeated, kneeling beside the little girl with a tenderness that nearly brought Steffi to tears. "Her name is Alara Forrester." Hope blinked rapidly. Rich stepped forward, stunned beyond comprehension. Brooke whispered something under her breath. A mix of disbelief and confusion. Eric was the first to speak. Thomas, you have a daughter? Thomas nodded. Yes, and she's been in my life for 2 years. 2 years. Steffi whispered, her voice cracking. Thomas, you never said a word. I wasn't ready, he replied softly. And Arya, she wasn't ready for this world, for this family, for the chaos. I needed to protect them while I figured out who I was away from everything. Hope swallowed hard, her eyes lingering on Little, who clung to Ariel's leg shyly. Brooke, unable to hold her shock, said, So, you've been hiding a child from us? Thomas inhaled sharply. Not hiding. Protecting. The word hung heavy in the air. Protecting from what? From who? From them. Arya stepped forward with grace. Hi, I know this is overwhelming. Thomas talks about all of you often. This family shaped him, but he needed space to break old patterns. We built our life in Paris quietly. And when got older, Thomas felt it was finally time. Hope stepped closer because this story didn't feel real. Are you saying you and Thomas Yuri together? Thomas shared a quick glance with Arya. A look that was deep, mature, filled with shared understanding. Yes, Arya answered, her voice warm. We're partners and we're raising it together. This revelation hit Hope like a silent punch to the chest, but she forced herself to stay composed. She had moved on. She had her independence. This wasn't supposed to hurt, but it did. Steffi, tears in her eyes, approached and hugged Thomas tightly. You have a daughter, she whispered. I'm an aunt. Thomas held her strongly. Yes, and I want her to know her family. Eric stepped closer, overwhelmed with joy. A new Forrester, he smiled, gently touching Ara's hand. She's beautiful, that smiled shyly and hid behind Arya again. Rich exhaled, shaking his head in disbelief. Son, I'm shocked, but am also proud. You look different. Better. Thomas nodded. I am, and I want to explain everything. But first, he turned to Arya, and I want everyone to meet the people who helped me become who I needed to be. Brooke crossed her arms uneasy. Who exactly are they? Thomas. This time another figure stepped inside. A man early 30s, tall, clean-cut, carrying 2 suitcases and smiling warmly. This is Noah Eris's brother. Thomas introduced that he's been living with us in Paris for almost a year now. He's part of the family too. Brooke's eyebrows shot up. So, you brought an entire household? Thomas nodded calmly. Yes, Brooke, because they are my family. The room buzzed with tension again.